Play-by-play.
Anyway, the train docks shortly after this, and Harry sees Hagrid again, which is cool. They take a ride in some little boats, I imagine as big as a canoe, but without the cooler, and, then they reach the castle, leading us into Chapter 7, The Sorting Hat. There's really not a ton in this chapter. We see Prof. McGee, who tells him about the houses, gets them ready for the sorting. Hermione gets put into Gryffindor, Malfoy, Slytherin, a few others along the way. Harry has his moment where the hat, immediately recognizably asks not to be, put in Slytherin because the hat is saying you would do well in Slytherin. The hat takes a while and tries to talk him into it a bit. Harry ultimately gets the upper hand in this little mental battle with the hat of basically begging. Let's be honest. He was begging. I think the common thought here is that the hat is sensing the shard of Voldemort's soul inside Harry, and that's why he's thinking Slytherin, but that seems kind of off to me. We see a strong pull of family in sorting. Not always, but most of what we see are families following the same house. All the Weasleys, the Malfoys, the Crabs, the Goyles, almost all of the Blacks, with the exception of Sirius. Aside from the Patel twins being separated and Sirius breaking that Black family tradition and eventually being burned off the family tree, blood relatives often wind up in the same house. Harry's parents were Gryffindors. I assume that the Potters before him would have been Gryffindor based on the Snape's, I can't think of the chapter name off the top of my head now, even though I just said it a few minutes ago. But it's the bear with me. Give it a second. He will think of it. No, he won't. But he gets it from Snape's memories where he meets James in the compartment where James is talking to Sirius, and James says, I'm going to be in Gryffindor like my dad. So we assume that the Potters come from a long line of Gryffindors, and we assume that Lily comes from a long line of no houses because she was Muggleborn. Everything about Harry's character also lines up for the qualities of Gryffindor house. I know some people, claim that he actually should have been in Slytherin. I couldn't disagree more with that. So if the hat is sensing one shard, one tiny shred of Voldemort's soul versus all of these qualities and generations of, bravery in Gryffindors, it doesn't add up that well to me why it's such a debate. I also don't really align with those in the fandom who say that, that Harry did belong in Slytherin, because I don't see the cunning. I don't see, maybe ambitious a little bit, but it just doesn't really line up to me. Hermione and Ravenclaw, sure. Ron and Hufflepuff, yeah, maybe. Harry and Slytherin, no. The only thing that might make some sense here is what happens at the Gryffindor table. It's the moment everyone remembers as the first time Harry, feels his scar burn. And it happens when he locks eyes with Snape, who's glaring at him loathingly. And Harry thinks it has something to do with him. Of course, we know that it's because at that same moment, Voldemort's face is sticking out of the back of Quirrell's head and staring at him from underneath a turban. We assume he can see through the turban, right? Because otherwise, how's he keeping an eye on Quirrell? We'll go down that rabbit hole later. Could the proximity to Voldemort at the moment he put on the sorting hat have actually stirred that Voldy soul just enough, maybe to just bring it more to the surface? Maybe. But I don't think that's it. Or the moment in the second book wouldn't have happened in Dumbledore's office with the hat. Voldemort was nowhere near him at that moment, and the hat still stood by. You would have done well in Slytherin. It has to be more about Harry, and I'm sorry, you're trying to tell me that a pure intact soul of a Gryffindor legacy heir to the third Peveril brother prophesies to defeat the heir of Slytherin himself doesn't outweigh a sliver of Voldemort's soul without Harry begging for it? I just don't buy this plot device. I just don't. Anyways, Harry's a Gryffindor. The end. His scar burns when he sees Snape glaring at him in pure hatred and is unaware that Voldemort's staring at him too. And I forgot that before this, Dumbledore gives his welcome speech by saying a few words, nitwit, blubber, oddment, tweak, which is amazingly whimsical and something missing from the character in the movies completely. And quite frankly, the rest of the series, this part of his personality just kind of doesn't shine through. It kind of falls away a little bit. Perhaps it's just because the stakes are getting too great for awkward humor, or maybe the author just didn't feel like it was important or organic enough to make its way in some of the moments that are to come. Either way, we had to highlight it because it's funny. They eat, it's fantastic. Nearly Headless Nick does a party trick. We get a real speech and then a warning about a third floor corridor on the right side being out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Like you do. They sing a song, find the dorm, go to bed. Harry's dream is creepy and way more hints to his future than he realizes at all. And then he doesn't remember anything about it.
The Belated Binge Podcast.